for ransom Mr. Mulligan, in a gale of laughter at his smalls, smote himself bravely below the diaphragm, exclaiming with an admirable droll mimic of Mother Grogan, the most excellent creature of her sex, though 'tis pity she's a trollop, there's a belle that never bore a bastard. This was so happy a conceit that it renewed the storm of mirth and threw the whole room into the most violent agitations of delight. The spry rattle had run on in the same vein of mimicry but for some larm in the antechamber. Here the listener, who was none other than the Scotch student, a little fume of a fellow, blond as tow, congratulated in the liveliest fashion with the young gentleman and, interrupting the narrative at a salient point, having desired his vis-a-vis with a polite beck to have the obligingness to pass him a flagon of cordial waters at the same time by a questioning poise of the head, a whole century of polite breeding had not achieved so nice a gesture, to which was united an equivalent but contrary balance of the bottle, asked the narrator as plainly as was ever done in words if he might treat him with a cup of it. "Mace bean, sir, noble stranger," said he cheerily, "et mille compliments. That you man very opportunely. There wanted nothing but this cup to crown my felicity. But, gracious heaven, was I left with but a crust in my wallet and a cupful of water from the well? My God, I would accept of them and find it in my heart to kneel down upon the ground and give thanks to the powers above for the happiness vouchsafed me by the giver of good things." With these words he approached the goblet to his lips, took a complacent draught of the cordial, slicked his hair and, opening his bosom, out popped a locket that hung from a silk riband, that very picture which he had cherished ever since her hand had wrote therein. Gazing upon those features with a world of tenderness, "Ah, monsieur," he said, "had you but beheld her as I did with these eyes at that affecting instant with her dainty tucker and her new coquette cap, a gift for her feast day as she told me prettily, in such an artless disorder, of so melting a tenderness, upon my conscience, even you, monsieur, had been impelled by generous nature to deliver yourself wholly into the hands of such an enemy and to quit the field forever. I declare, I was never so touched in all my life. God, I thank thee, as the author of my days. Thrice happy will he be whom so amiable a creature will bless with her favors." A sigh of affection gave eloquence to these words and, having replaced the locket in his bosom, he wiped his eye and sighed again. "Beneficent disseminator of blessings to all thy creatures, how great and universal must be that sweetest of thy tyrannies which can hold and thrall the free and the bond, the simple swain and the polished coxcomb, the lover and the heyday of reckless passion and the husband of mature years. But indeed, sir, I wander from the point. How mingled and imperfect are all our sublunary joys. Maledicity!" he exclaimed in anguish. "Would to God that foresight had but remembered me to take my cloak along. I could weep to think of it. Then, though it had poured 7 showers, we were neither of us a penny the worse. But bethrough me," he cried, clapping hand to his forehead, "tomorrow will be a new day and, thousand thunders, I know of all mark hand decompose, Monsieur Points, from whom I can have for a liver as snug a cloak in the French fashion as ever kept a lady from wedding." "Tut, tut," cries the fecundator, tripping in, "my friend Monsieur Moore, that most accomplished traveler I have just cracked a half-bottle of Louis in a circle of the best wits of the town, is my authority that in Cape Horn, Venterbick, they have a rain that will weather any, even the stoutest cloak. A drenching of that violence, he tells me, Sandsburg, have sent more than one luckless fellow in good earnest post this to another world." "Pooh! A liver," cries Monsieur Lynch. "The clumsy things are dear to sue. One umbrella, were it no bigger than a fairy mushroom, is worth 10 such stopgaps. No woman of any wit would wear one. My dear Kitty told me today that she would dance in a deluge before ever she would starve in such an ark of salvation for, as she reminded me, blushing piquantly and whispering in my ear though there was none to snap her words but giddy butterflies, Dame Nature, by the divine blessing, has implanted it in our hearts and it has become a household word that L.Y.D. chooses for which the innocence of our original garb, and other circumstances a breach of the proprieties, is the fittest, nay, the only garment. The first," said she, "and here my pretty philosopher, as I handed her to her tilbury, to fix my attention, gently tipped with her tongue the outer chamber of my ear, the first is a bath. But at this point a bell tinkling in the hall cut short the discourse which promised so bravely for the enrichment of our store of knowledge. Amid the general vacant hilarity of the assembly a bell rang and, while all were conjecturing what might be the cause, Miss Callan entered and, having spoken a few words in a low tone to young Mr. Dixon, retired with a profound bow to the company. The presence even for a moment among a party of debauchees of a woman endued with every quality of modesty and not less severe than beautiful refrained the humorous sallies even of the most licentious, but her departure was the signal for an outbreak of ribaldry. "Strike me silly," said Costello, a low fellow who was fuddled. "A monstrous fine bit of co-foolish. I'll be sworn she has rendezvoused you." "What, you dog? Have you away with them?" "Gads, bud, immensely so," said Mr. Lynch. "The bedside manner it is that they use in the Mater Hospice. Dem, does not Dr. Ogergle chuck the nuns there under the chin? As I look to be saved I had it from my kitty who has been ward maid there any time these 7 months." "Locks of mercy, doctor," cried the young blood in a primrose vest, feigning a manner simpering with the modest squirmings of his body. "How you do tease a body. Drit the man. Bless me, I'm all of a wibbly-wobbly. Why, you're as bad as dear little Father Cantacuzene, that you are." "May this pot afore half choke me," cried Costello, "if she ain't in the family way. I knows a lady what's got a white swelling quick as I collapse eyes on her." The young surgeon, however, rose and begged the company to excuse his retreat as the nurse had just been informed him that he was needed in the ward. Merciful Providence had been pleased to put a period to the sufferings of the lady who was inscient which she had borne with a laudable fortitude, and she had given birth to a bouncing boy. "I want patience," said he, "with those who, without wit to enliven or learning to instruct, revile an ennobling profession which, saving the reverence due to the deity, is the greatest power for happiness upon the earth. I am positive when I say that if need were I could produce a cloud of witnesses to the excellence of noble exercitations which, so far from being a byword, should be a glorious incentive in the human breast. I cannot away with them. What? Malign such an one, the amiable Miss Callan, who is the lustre of her own sex and the astonishment of ours. And at an instant the most momentous that can befall a puny child of clay. Perish the thought. I shudder to think of the future of a race where the seeds of such malice have been sown and where no right reverence is rendered to mother and maid and house of horn. Having delivered himself of this rebuke he saluted those present on the by and repaired to the door. A murmur of approval arose from all, and some were for ejecting the low soaker without more ado, a design which would have been effected, nor would he have received more than his bare deserts had he not abridged his transgression by affirming with a horrid imprecation, for he swore around hand, that he was as good a son of the true fold as ever drew breath. "Stay out my vitals," said he, and was always the sentiments of honest Frank Costello, which I was bred up most particular to honor thy father and thy mother that had the best hand to a Gallipoli or a hasty pudding as you ever see, what I always looks back on with a loving heart. To revert to Mr. Bloom, who, after his first entry, had been conscious of some impotent marks which he however had borne with as being the fruits of that age upon which it is commonly charged that it knows not pity. The young sparks, it is true, were as full of extravagancies as overgrown children. The words of their tumultuary discussions were difficultly understood and not often nice. Their testinous and outrageous mots were such that his intellect reeled from, nor were they scrupulously sensible of the proprieties, though their fund of strong animal spirits spoke in their behalf. But the word of Mr. Costello was an unwelcome language for him, for he nauseated the wretch that seemed to him a crepier creature of a misshapen gibbosity, born out of wedlock and thrust like a crook-back-toothed and feet first into the world, which the dent of the surgeon's pliers and his scullant indeed a color to, so as to put him in thought of that missing link of creation's chain desiderated by the latent genius Mr. Darwin. It was now for more than the middle span of our allotted years that he had passed through the thousand vicissitudes of existence, and, being of a wary ascendancy and self a man of rare forecast, he had enjoined his heart to repress all motions of a rising choler, and, by intercepting them with the readiest precaution, foster within his breast the plenitude of sufferance which base minds jeer at, rash judges scorn, and all find tolerable and but tolerable. To those who create themselves wits at the cost of feminine delicacy, a habit of mind which he never did hold with, to them he would concede neither to bear the name nor to inherit the tradition of a proper breeding, while for such that, having lost all forbearance, can lose no more, there remains the sharp antidote of experience to cause their insolency to beat a precipitate and inglorious retreat. Not but what he could feel with meddlesome youth which, caring not for the mosadotards or the gruntlings of the severe, is ever, as the chaste fancy of the holy writer expresses it, for eating of the tree forbid it, yet not so far forth as to pretermit humanity upon any condition soever towards a gentlewoman when she was about her lawful occasions. To conclude, while from the sister's words he had reckoned upon a speedy delivery, he was, however, it must be owned, not a little alleviated by the intelligence that the issue so auspicated after an ordeal of such duress now testified once more to the mercy as well as to the bounty of the Supreme Being. Accordingly he broke his mind to his neighbor, saying that, to express his notion of the thing, his opinion, who ought not perchance to express one, was that one must have a cold constitution and a frigid genius not to be rejoiced by this freshest news of the fruition of her confinement, since she had been in such pain through no fault of hers. The dressy young blade said it was her husband's that put her in that expectation, or at least it ought to be, unless she were another Ephesian matron. I must acquaint you, said Mr. Crothers, clapping on the table so as to evoke a resonant comment of emphasis. Old Gloria Leliagerum was round again today, an elderly man with dungarees, preferring through his nose a request to have word of Wilhelmina, my life, as he calls her. I bade him hold himself in readiness for that the event would burst in one's life. I'll be round with you. I could not but extol the virile potency of the old bucko that could still knock another child out of her. All fell to praising of it, each after his own fashion, though the same young blade held with his former view that another than her conjugal had been the man in the gap, a clerk in orders, a link boy, virtuous, or an itinerant vendor of articles needed in every household. Singular, commented the guest with himself, the wonderfully unequal faculty of metempsychosis possessed by them, that the puerile dormitory and the dissecting theater should be the seminaries of such frivolity, that the mere acquisition of academic titles should suffice to transform in a pinch of time these votaries of levity into exemplary practitioners of an art which most men anywise eminent have esteemed the noblest. But, he further added, it is mayhap to relieve the pent-up feelings that in common oppress them, for I have more than once observed that birds of a feather laugh together. But with what fitness, let it be asked of the noble lord, his patron, has this alien, whom the concession of a gracious prince has admitted to civic rights, constituted himself the lord paramount of our internal polity? Where is now that gratitude which Loldy should have counseled? During the recent war, whenever the enemy had a temporary advantage with his granados, did this traitor to his kind not seize that moment to discharge his piece against the empire of which he is a tenant, while he trembled for the security of his 4%? Has he forgotten this as he forgets all benefits received? Or is it that from being a deluder of others he has become at last his own dupe, as he is, if report belie him not, his own and his only enjoyer? Far be it from candor to violate the bedchamber of the respectable lady, the daughter of a gallant major, or to cast the most distant reflections upon her virtue, but if to challenge his attention there, as it was indeed highly his interest not to have done, then be it so. Unhappy woman, she has been too long and too persistently denied her legitimate prerogative to listen to his objurgations with any other feeling than the derision of the desperate. He says this, a censor of morals, a very pelican in his piety, who did not scruple, oblivious of the ties of nature, to attempt illicit intercourse with a female domestic drawn from the lowest strata of society. Nay, had the hussy's scoring brush not been her tutelary angel, it had gone with her as hard as with Hagar, the Egyptian. In the question of the grazing lands his peevish asperity is notorious, and in Mr. Cuff's hearing brought upon him from an indignant rancher a scathing retort couched in terms as straightforward as they were be call it. It ill becomes him to preach the gospel. Has he not near home a seed field that lies fallow for the one of the plowshare? A habit reprehensible at puberty is second nature and opprobrium in middle life. If he must dispense his balm of Gilead and nostrums and apothegms of dubious taste to restore to health a generation of unfledged profligates, let his practice consist better with the doctrines that now engross him. His marital breast is the repository of secrets which decorum is reluctant to adduce. The lewd suggestions of some faded beauty may console him for a consort neglected and debauched, but this new exponent of morals and healer of ills is at his best an exotic tree which, when rooted in its native Orient, throve and flourished and was abundant in balm, but, transplanted to a clime more temperate, its roots have lost their quondam vigor, while the stuff that comes away from it is stagnant, acid and inoperative. The news was imparted with a circumspection recalling the ceremonial usage of the sublime port by the second female infirmary and to the junior medical officer in residence, who in his turn announced to the delegation that an heir had been born, when he had betaken himself to the women's apartment to assist at the prescribed ceremony of the afterbirth in the presence of the Secretary of State for Domestic Affairs and the members of the Privy Council. Silent in unanimous exhaustion and approbation, the delegates, chafing under the lengthened solemnity of their vigil and hoping that the joyful occurrence would palliate a license which the simultaneous absence of Abigail and obstetrician rendered easier, broke out at once into a strife of tongues. In vain the voice of Mr. Canvasser Balloon was heard endeavoring to urge, to mollify, the refrain. The moment was too propitious for the display of that discursiveness which seemed the only bond of union among tempers so divergent. Every phase of the situation was successively eviscerated. The prenatal repugnance of uter in brothers, the caesarean section, posthumity with respect to the father and, that rare form, with respect to the mother, the fratricidal case known as the child's murder and rendered memorable by the impassioned plea of Mr. Advocate Bush which secured an acquittal of the wrongfully accused by primogeniture and king's bounty touching twins and triplets, miscarriages and infanticides, simulated or dissimulated, the cardiac foetus and foetu in a prosopia due to congestion, the agnathia of certain chinless Chinamen cited by Mr. Candidate Mulligan in consequence of defective union of the magazine knobs along the medial line so that, as he said, one ear could hear what the other spoke, the benefits of anesthesia or twilight sleep, the prolongation of labor pains and advanced gravidancy by reason of pressure on the vein, the premature relentement of the amniotic fluid as exemplified in the actual case, with consequent peril of sepsis to the matrix, artificial insemination by means of syringes, involution of the womb consequent upon the menopause, the problem of the perpetration of the species in the case of females impregnated by delinquent rape, the distressing manner of delivery called by the Brandenburger Sturgebird, the recorded instances of multismonal, tricondyl monstrous births conceived during the catamenic period or of consanguineous parents, in a word all the cases of human nativity which Aristotle has classified in his masterpiece with chromolithographic illustrations. The gravest problems of obstetrics and forensic medicine were examined with as much animation as the most popular beliefs on the state of pregnancy, such as the forbidding to a gravid woman to step over country, still less, by her movement, than a Vilkard should strangle her creature, and the injunction upon her in the event of a yearning, ardently and ineffectually entertained, to place her hand against that part of her person which long usage has consecrated as the seat of castigation. The abnormalities of herelic, breast molly, supernumerary digits, negrozincle, strawberry mark and port wine stain were alleged by one as a prima facie and natural hypothetical explanation of those swine-headed. The case of Madame Stevens was not forgotten, her dog-haired infants occasionally born. The hypothesis of a plasmic memory, advanced by the Caledonian envoy and worthy of the metaphysical traditions of the land he stood for, envisaged in such cases an arrest of embryonic development at some stage antecedent to the human. An outlandish delegate sustained against both these views, with such heat as almost carried conviction, the theory of copulation between women and the males of brutes, his authority being his own accouchement and support of fables such as that of the Minotaur which the genius of the elegant Latin poet has handed down to us in the pages of his Metamorphoses. The impression made by his words was immediate but short-lived. It was effaced as easily as it had been evoked by an allocution from Mr. Candidate Mulligan in that vein of pleasantry which none better than he knew how to affect, postulating as the supremest object of desire nice clean old man. Contemporaneously, a heated argument having arisen between Mr. Delegate Madden and Mr. Candidate Lynch regarding the juridical and theological dilemma created in the event of one Siamese twin predeceasing the other. The difficulty by mutual consent was referred to Mr. Canvasser Balloon, for instance, middle to Mr. Joy or Deacon Daedalus. Hitherto silent, whether the better to show by preternatural gravity the curious dignity of the guard with which he was invested or in obedience to an inward voice, he delivered briefly and, Some thought, perfunctorily the ecclesiastical ordinance forbidding man to put asunder what God has joined. But Malachi's tale began to freeze them with horror. He conjured up the scene before them. The secret panel beside the chimney slid back and in the recess appeared Haynes. Which of us did not feel his flesh creep? He had a portfolio full of Celtic literature in one hand, in the other fatal-marked poison. Surprise, horror, loathing were depicted on all faces while he eyed them with a ghostly grin. I anticipated some such reception. He began with an eldritch laugh, for which, it seems, history is to blame. Yes, it is true. I am the murderer of Samuel Childs. And how I am punished. The inferno has no terrors for me. This is the appearances on me. Taurian ages, what way would I be resting at all? He muttered thickly, and I tramping doubling this way back with my share of songs and himself after me the like it a Sulthar a Bulweris. My hell, and Ireland's, is in this life. It is what I tried to obliterate my crime. Distractions, rook-shooting, the earth's language. He recited some laudanum. He raised the field to his lips, camping out. In vain. His spectre stalks me. Dope is my only hope. Ah! Destruction. The Black Panther. With a cry he suddenly vanished and the panel slid back. An instant later his head appeared on the door opposite and said, "Meet me at Westland Row Station at 11:10. He was gone. Tears gushed from the eyes of the dissipated host. The seer raised his hand to heaven, murmuring, "The vendetta of Mananon." The sage repeated, "Lex talionis." The sentimentalist is he who would enjoy without incurring the immense debtorship for a thing done. Malachius, overcome by emotion, ceased. History was unveiled. Haynes was the third brother. His real name was Childs. The Black Panther was himself the ghost of his own father. He drank drugs to obliterate. For this relief much thanks. The lonely house by the graveyard is uninhabited. No soul lived there. The spider pitches her web in the solitude. The nocturnal rat peers from his hole. A curse is on it. It is haunted. Murder's ground. What is the age of the soul of man? As she hath the virtue of the chameleon to change her hue at every new approach, to be gay with the merry and mournful with the downcast, so too is her age changeable as her mood. No longer is Leopold, as he sits there, ruminating, chewing the cud of reminiscence, that staid agent of publicity and holder of the modest substance in the funds. A score of years are blown away. He is young Leopold. There, as in a retrospective arrangement, a mirror within a mirror, hey, presto. He beholdeth himself, that young figure of the scene, precociously manly, walking on a nipping morning from the old house in Clonbrassil Street to the high school, his book satchel on him bandolier-wise, and in a goodly hunk of wheaten loaf, a mother's thought. Or it is the same figure, a year or so gone over, and his first hard hat, ah, that was a day. Already on the road, a full-fledged traveler for the family firm, equipped with an order book, a scented handkerchief not for show only, his case of bright trinket-ware, alas. A thing now of the past. And a quiverful of compliant smiles for the certain half-won housewife reckoning it out upon her fingertips or for a budding virgin, shyly acknowledging, but the heart. Tell me. Is studied by Samoans. The scent, the smile, but, more than this, the dark eyes and legionous address, brought home at duskfall many a commission to the head of the firm, seated with Jacob's pipe after like laborers in the paternal ingle, a meal of noodles, you may be sure, is a heating, reading through a round-horned spectacle some paper from the Europe of a month before. But hey, presto, the mirror is breathed on and the young night errant recedes, shrivels, dwindles to a tiny speck within the mist. Now he is himself paternal and these about him might be his sons. Who can say? The wise father knows his own child. He thinks of the drizzling nights in Hatch Street, hard by the bonded stores there, the first. Together she is a poor waif, a child of shame, years and mine and of offer a bare shilling and her luck penny, Together they hear the heavy tread of the watch as two rain-caked shadows pass the new Royal University. Britty Kelly. He will never forget the name, ever remember the night, first night, the bride and night. They are entwined in the thermost darkness, the willer with the willed, and in an instant, fiat. Light shall flood the world. Did heart leap to heart? Nay, fair reader. In a breath 'twas done, but hold back. It must not be. In terror the poor girl flees her way through the murk. She is the bride of darkness, a daughter of night. She dare not bear this near golden babe at day. No, Leopold. Name and memory solace thee not. That youthful illusion of thy strength was taken from thee and in vain. No son of thy loins is by thee. There is none now to be for Leopold, what Leopold was for Rudolph. The voices blend and fuse in clouded silence, silence that is the infinite of space, and swiftly, silently the soul is wafted over regions of cycles of generations that have lived. A region where gray twilight ever descends, never falls on wide sage-green pasture fields, shedding her dusk, scattering a perennial dew of stars. She follows her mother with ungainly steps, a mare leading her fairly foal. Twilight phantoms are they, yet molded in prophetic grace of structure, slim shapely haunches, a supple tendonous neck, the meek apprehensive skull. The fade, sad phantoms, all is gone. Agendeth is a waste land, a home of screech owls and the sand-blind elpipa. The time, the golden, is no more. And on the highway of the clouds they come, muttering thunder of rebellion, the ghosts of beasts. Hew. Hark. Hew. Parallax stalks behind and goads them, the lancinating lightnings of whose brow are scorpions. Elk and yak, the bulls of Bashan and of Babylon, mammoth and mastodon, they come trooping to the sunken sea, black as mortis. Ominous revengeful zodiacal host. They moan, passing upon the clouds, horned and copper-corned, the trumpeted with the tusk, the lion-man, the giant-antlered, snider and crawler, rodent, ruminant and pachyderm, all their moving moaning multitude, murders of the sun. Onward to the Dead Sea they tramp to drink, unslaked with horrible gulpings, the salt sun at an inexhaustible flood. And the equine portent grows again, magnified in the deserted heavens, nay the heaven's own magnitude, till it looms, vast, over the house of Virgo. And lo, wonder of metempsychosis, it is she, the everlasting bride, harbinger of the day star, the bride, ever virgin. It is she, Martha, thou lost one, Millicent, the young, the dear, the radiant. How serene does she now arise, a queen among the Pleiades, in the penultimate antelucane hour, shouting sandals of bright gold, coiffed with a veil of what do you call it, gossamer. It flows about her star-born flesh in lucid streams, emerald, sapphire, mauve and heliotrope, sustained on currents of the cold interstellar wind, winding, coiling, simply swirling, writhing in the skies a mysterious writing till, after myriad metamorphoses assemble, it blazes, alpha, a ruby and triangled sign upon the forehead of Taurus. Francis was reminding Stephen of years before when they had been at school together in Kami's time. He asked about Glaucon, Alcibiades, Pisistratus. Where were they now? Neither knew. You have spoken of the past and its phantoms, Stephen said. Why think of them? If I call them into life across the waters of Lethe, will not the poor ghost troop to my call? Who supposes it? I, with Stephanumenos, bullock befriending bard, am lord and giver of their life. He encircled his gadding hair with the coronal of vanilla leaves, smiling at Vincent. That answer in those leaves, Vincent said to him, will adorn you more fitly when something more, and greatly more, than a capful of light notes can call your genius father. All who wish you well hope this for ye. All desire to see you bring forth the work you meted it, so claim you Stephanophoros. I heartily wish you may not fail them. Oh no, Vincent Linehan said, laying a hand on the shoulder near him. Have no fear. He could not leave his mother an orphan. The young man's face grew dark. All could see how hard it was for him to be reminded of his promise and of his recent loss. He would have withdrawn from the feast had not the noise of voices laid the smart. Madden had lost 5 drachmas on Scepter for a whim of the rider's name, Linehan as much more. He told them of the race. The flag fell and, hew off, scampered, the mare ran out freshly with 0. Madden up. She was leading the field. All hearts were beating. Even Phyllis could not contain herself. She waved her scarf and cried, "Huza! Scepter wins." But in the straight on the run home when all were in close order the dark horse throwaway drew level, reached, outstripped her. All was lost now. Phyllis was silent, her eyes were sad anemones. "Juno," she cried, "I am undone." But her lover consoled her and brought her a bright casket of gold in which lay some oval cigar plums which she partook. A tear fell, one only. "A whack and fine whip," said Linehan, "is doubly lame. 4 winners yesterday and 3 today. What rider is like him? Mount him on the camel or the boisterous buffalo, the victory in a hack canter is still his. But let us bear it as was the ancient wont. Mercy on the luckless. Poor Scepter," he said with a light sigh. "She is not the filly that she was. Never, by this hand, shall we behold such another. By gad, sir, a queen of them. Do you remember her, Vincent?" "I wish you could have seen my queen today," Vincent said. "How young she was and radiant, loud were scarce fair beside her in her yellow shoes and frogged muslin, I do not know the right name of it. The chestnuts that shaded us were in bloom, the air drooped with a persuasive odor and with pollen floating by us. In the sunny patches one might easily have cooked on a stone a batch of those bones with corn fruit in them that Poman sells in his booth near the bridge. But she had not for her teeth but the arm with which I held her, and in it she nibbled mischievously when I pressed too close. A week ago she lay ill, 4 days on the couch, but today she was free, blithe, mocked at peril. She is more taken than. Her post is too mad romp that she had pulled her fill as we reclined together. And in your ear, my friend, you will not think he met us as we left the field. Can meet himself. He was walking by the hedge, reading, I think a brevier book with, I doubt not, a witty letter in it from Glycera or Chloe to keep the page." The sweet creature turned all colors in her confusion, feigning to reprove a slight disorder in her dress. A slip of underwood clung there for the very trees adore her. When Camille had passed she glanced at her lovely echo in that little mirror she carries. But he had been kind. In going by he had blessed us. The gods too are ever kind, Linehan said. If I had poor luck with Base's mare perhaps this draught of his may serve me more propensely. He was laying his hand upon her wine yara, Malachi saw it and withheld his act, pointing to the stranger and to the scarlet label. Wearily, Malachi whispered, preserve a druid silence. His soul is far away. It is as painful perhaps to be awakened from a vision as to be born. Any object, intensely regarded, may be a gate of access to the incorruptible Aeon of the gods. Do you not think it, Stephen? Theosophos told me so, Stephen answered, whom in a previous existence Egyptian priests initiated into the mysteries of karmic law. The lords of the moon, Theosophos told me, an orange fiery shipload from planet Alpha of the lunar chain would not assume the etheric doubles, and these were therefore incarnated by the ruby-colored egos from the second constellation. However, as a matter of fact though, the preposterous surmise about him being in some description of a doldrums or other or mesmerized, which was entirely due to a misconception of the Shalaos character, was not the case at all. The individual whose visual organs while the above was going on were at this juncture commencing to exhibit symptoms of animation was as astute if not astuter than any man living, and anybody that conjectured the contrary would have found themselves pretty speedily in the wrong shop. During the past 4 minutes or thereabouts he had been staring hard at a certain amount of number 1 base bottled by Messrs. Base & Co. at Burton-on-Trent, which happened to be situated amongst a lot of others right opposite to where he was, and which was certainly calculated to anyone's remark on account of its scarlet appearance. He was simply and solely, as it subsequently transpired for reasons best known to himself, which put quite an altogether different complexion on the proceedings, after the moment before his observations about boyhood days in the turf, recollecting 2 or 3 private transactions of his own which the other 2 were as mutually innocent of as the babe unborn. Eventually, however, both their eyes met, and as soon as it began to dawn on him that the other was endeavoring to help himself to the thing he involuntarily determined to help him himself, and so he accordingly took hold of the neck of the medium-sized glass recipient which contained the fluid sought after, and made a capacious hole in it by pouring a lot of it out with, also at the same time, however, a considerable degree of attentiveness in order not to upset any of the beer that was in and about the place. The debate which ensued was in its scope and progress an epitome of the chorus of life. Neither place nor council was lacking in dignity. The debaters were the keenest in the land, the theme they were engaged on the loftiest and most vital. The high hall at Horn's house had never beheld an assembly so representative and so varied, nor had the old rafters of that establishment ever listened to a language so encyclopedic. A gallant scene in truth it made. Crowthurst was there at the foot of the table in his striking Highland garb, his face glowing from the briny airs of the Mull of Galloway. There too, opposite to him, was Lynch, whose countenance bore already the stigmata of early depravity and premature wisdom. Next the Scotchman was the place assigned to Costello, the eccentric, while at his side was seated in stolid repose the squat form of Madden. The chair of the resident indeed stood vacant before the hearth, but on either flank of it the figure of Bannon in explorer's kit, shorts and salted cowhide brogues contrasted sharply with the primrose elegance and town-bred manners of Malachi rolling St. John Mulligan. Lastly at the head of the board was the young poet who found a refuge from his labors of pedagogy and metaphysical inquisition in the convivial atmosphere of Socratic discussion, while to right and left of him were accommodated the flippant prognosticator, fresh from the hippodrome, and a vigilant wanderer, soiled by the dust of travel and combat and stained by the mire of an indelible dishonor, but from whose steadfast and constant heart no lure or peril or threat or degradation could ever efface the image of that voluptuous loveliness which the inspired pencil of Lafayette has limned for ages yet to come. It had better be stated here and now at the outset that the perverted transcendentalism to which Mr. S. Daedalus dived contentions would appear to prove him pretty badly addicted runs directly counter to accepted scientific methods. Science, it cannot be too often repeated, deals with tangible phenomena. The man of science, like the man in the street, has to face hard-headed facts that cannot be blinked and explain them as best he can. There may be, it is true, some questions which science cannot answer at present, such as the first problem submitted by Mr. L. Bloom, Pub. Canv. Regarding the future determination of sex. Must we accept the view of Empedocles Alternacry that the right ovary, the postmenstrual period, assert others, is responsible for the birth of males, or are the too long neglected spermatozoa or nemasperms the differentiating factors, or is it, as most embryologists incline to opine, such as Culpeper, Spallanzani, Blumenbach, Lusk, Hertwig, Leopold and Valenti, a mixture of both? This would be tantamount to a cooperation, one of nature's favorite devices, between the nisius formativus of the nemasperm on the one hand and on the other a happily chosen position, succubitus felix of the passive element. The other problem raised by the same inquirer is scarcely less vital, infant mortality. It is interesting because, as he pertinently remarks, we are all born in the same way but we all die in different ways. Mr. M. Mulligan, et al. Blames the sanitary conditions in which our Greyland citizens contract adenoids, pulmonary complaints, etc. by inhaling the bacteria which lurk in dust. These factors, he alleged, and the revolting spectacles offered by our streets, hideous publicity posters, religious ministers of all denominations, mutilated soldiers and sailors, exposed scorebeat car drivers, the suspended carcasses of dead animals, paranoid bachelors and unfructified unions, these, he said, were accountable for any and every fallen gulf in the caliber of the race. Calipedia, he prophesied, would soon be generally adopted, and all the graces of life, genuinely good music, agreeable literature, light philosophy, instructive pictures, plaster cast reproductions of the classical statues such as Venus and Apollo, artistic colored photographs of prize babies, All these little attentions would enable ladies who were in a particular condition to pass the intervening months in a most enjoyable manner. Mr. J. Crotthurst, Disc. Attributes some of these differences to abdominal trauma in the case of women workers subjected to heavy labors in the workshop and to marital discipline in the home, but by far the vast majority to neglect, private artificial, culminating in the exposure of newborn infants, the practice of criminal abortion, or in the atrocious crime of infanticide. Although the former, we're thinking of neglect, is undoubtedly only too true, the case he cites of nurses forgetting to count the sponges in the peritoneal cavity is too rare to be normative. In fact, when one comes to look into it, the wonder is that so many pregnancies and deliveries go off so well as they do, all things considered, and in spite of our human shortcomings which often balk nature and her intentions. An ingenious suggestion is that thrown out by Mr. Harris, that both natality and mortality, as well as all other phenomena of evolution, tidal movements, lunar phases, blood temperatures, diseases in general, everything, in fine, in nature's vast workshop, from the extinction of some remote sun to the blossoming of one of the countless flowers which beautify our public parks, is subject to a law of numeration as yet unascertained. Still, the plain, straightforward question why a child of normally healthy parents and seemingly a healthy child and properly looked after succumbs unaccountably in early childhood, though other children of the same manners do not, must certainly, in the poet's words, give us pause. Nature, we may rest assured, has her own good and cogent reasons for whatever she does, and in all probability deaths are due to some law of anticipation by which organisms in which morbid germs have taken up their residence. Modern science has conclusively shown that only the plasmic substance can be said to be immortal, tend to disappear in an increasingly earlier stage of development, an arrangement which, though productive of pain to some of our feelings, notably the maternal, is nevertheless, some of us think, in the long run beneficial to the race in general, and securing thereby the survival of the fittest. Mr. S. Daedalus, Dive. Said. Remark, or should it be called an interruption, that an omnivorous being which can masticate, deglute, digest, and apparently pass the ordinary channel with perfect imperturbability such multifarious aliments as cancrenous females emaciated by parturition, corpulent professional gentlemen, not to speak of jaundiced politicians and chloritic nuns, might possibly find gastric relief in an innocent collation of staggering bob, reveals as not else could in a very unsavory light the tendency above alluded to. For the enlightenment of those who are not so intimately acquainted with the minutiae of the municipal abadar as this morbid-minded aesthete and embryo philosopher, who for all his overweening bumptiousness in things scientific can scarcely distinguish an acid from an alkali, prides himself on being, it should perhaps be stated that staggering bob in the vile parlance of our lower class licensed vidaler signifies the cookable and eatable flesh of a calf newly dropped from its mother. In a recent public controversy with Mr. L. Bloom, Pub. Canv., which took place in the Commons Hall at the National Maternity Hospital, 29, 30 and 31 Hull Street, of which, as is well known, Dr. A. Horn, Lick, and Mid. FKQCPI is the able and popular master, he is reported by eyewitnesses as having stated that once a woman has let the cat into the bag, and aesthete solution, presumably, the one of the most complicated and marvelous of all nature's processes, the act of sexual congress, she must let it out again or give it life, as he phrased it, to save her own. At the risk of her own, was the telling rejoinder of his interlocutor, none the less effective for the moderate and measured tone in which it was delivered. Meanwhile, the skill and patience of the physician had brought about a happy accouchement. It had been a weary while both for patient and doctor. All that surgical skunkity was done, and the brave woman had manfully helped. She had fought a good fight, and now she was very, very happy. Those who have passed on, who have gone before, are happy too as they gaze down and smile upon the touching scene. Reverently look at her as she reclines there with the mother light in her eyes, that longing hunger for baby fingers. A pretty sight it is to see, in the first bloom of her new motherhood, breathing a silent prayer of thanksgiving to one above, the universal husband. And as her loving eyes behold her babe, she wishes only one blessing more, to have her dear Dodie there with her to share her joy, to lay in his arms at mine of God's clay, the fruit of their lawful embraces. He is older now, you and I may whisper it, and a trifle stooped in the shoulders, yet in the whirligig of years a grave dignity has come to the conscientious second accountant of the Ulster Bank, College Green branch. Oh Dodie, loved one of old, faithful life made now, it may never be again, that fair off time of the roses. With the old shake of her pretty head she recalls those days. God, how beautiful now across the mist of years. But their children are grouped in her imagination about the bedside, hers and his, Charlie, Mary Alice, Frederick Albert if he had lived, me, Budgie, Victoria Francis, Tom, Violet Constance Louisa, darling little Bubsy, called after our famous hero of the South African War, Lord Bobs of Waterford and Kandahar, and now this last pledge of their union, a Purefoy if ever there was one, with the true Purefoy nose. Young hopeful will be christened Mortimer Edward after the influential third cousin of Mr. Purefoy in the Treasury Remembrancer's office, Dublin Castle. And so time wags on, but Father Cronian has dealt lightly here. No, let no sigh break from that bosom, dear gentle Mina. And Dodie, knock the ashes from your pipe, the seasoned briar you still fancy when the curfew ringed for you, may it be the distant day. In doubt the light whereby you reading the sacred book, for the oil too has run low, and so with a tranquil heart to bed, to rest. He knows and will call in his own good time. You too have fought a good fight and played loyally your man's part. Sir, to you my hand. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. There are sins, or let us call them as the world calls them, evil memories which are hidden away by man in the darkest places of the heart, but they abide there and wait. He may suffer their memory to grow dim, let them be as though they had not been, and all but persuade himself that they were not, or at least were otherwise. Yet a chance word will call them forth suddenly, and they will rise up to confront him in the most various circumstances, a vision or a dream, or wild timbrel and harp soothe his senses, or amid the cool silver tranquility of the evening, or at the feast, at midnight, when he is now filled with wine. Not to insult over him with a vision come as over one that lies under her wrath, not for vengeance to cut him off from the living, but shrouded in the piteous vesture of the past, silent, remote, reproachful. The stranger still regarded on the face before him a slow recession of that false calm there, imposed, as it seemed, by a habit or some studied trick, upon words so embittered as to accuse him their speaker an unhealthiness, further, the crude of things of life. A scene disengages itself in the observer's memory, evoked, it would seem, by a word of so natural a homeliness as if those days were really present there, as some thought, with their immediate pleasures. A shaven space of lawn one soft May evening, the well-remembered grove of lilacs at round town, purple and white, fragrant slender spectators of the game, but with much real interest in the pellets as they run slowly forward over the sward or collide and stop, one by its fellow, with a brief alert shot. And yonder about that gray urn where the water moves at times in thoughtful irrigation you saw another as fragrant sisterhood, Floy, Addie, Tiny and their darker friend with I know not what of a resting in her pose then, Our Lady of the Cherries, a comely brace of them pendant from near, bringing out the foreign warmth of the skin so daintily against the cool ardent fruit. A lad of 4 or 5 in Lindsay Wilsey, blossom time, but there will be cheer in the kindly hearth when ere long the bowls are gathered and hushed, standing on the urn secured by that circle of girlish formed hands. He frowns a little just as this young man does now, with a perhaps too conscious enjoyment of the danger, but must needs glance at whiles towards where his mother watches from the piazza, giving upon the flower colors with a faint shadow of remoteness or of reproach, ails verganglike in her glad look. Mark this farther and remember. The end comes suddenly. Enter the antechamber of birth where the studious are assembled and note their faces. Nothing, as it seems, they are of rash or violent quietude of custody, rather, befitting their station in that house, the vigilant watch of shepherds and of angels about a crib in Bethlehem of Judah long ago. But as before the lightning the serried storm clouds, heavy with preponderant excessive moisture, and swollen masses turgidly distended, compass earth and sky in one vast slumber, and pending above parched field in drowsy oxen and blighted growth of shrub and verdure, till in an instant a flash rives their centers, and with the reverberation of the thunder the cloudburst pours its torrent, so and not otherwise was the transformation, violent and instantaneous, upon the utterance of the word. Burke's Out flings my Lord Stephen, giving the cry, and a tag and the tail of all them after, cockerel, jackanapes, welcher, pile doctor, punctual balloon at heels with the universal grabbing headgear, splats, bilbos, Panama hats and scabards, Zermatt alpenstocks and whatnot. At the dale of lusty youth, noble every student there. Nurse Callan taken the back in the hallway cannot stay them nor smiling surgeon coming downstairs with news of placentation and a full pound of a milligram. They heart him on. The door. It is open. Hectares. They're out, tumultuously, off for a minute's race, all bravely legging it, Burke's and zillion holes their interior goal. Dixon follows giving them sharp language but raps out an oath, you too, and on. Bloom stays with nurse and thought to send a kind word to happy mother and they're selling up there. Doctor diet and doctor quiet. Looks you two not other now. Ward of watching in Horn's house has told its tale in that washed out pallor. Then all being gone, a glance of mother helping, he whispers close and going, Madam, when comes the stork bird for thee? The air without is impregnated with rain moisture, life essence celestial, glistening on Dublin stone there under star-shiny column. God's air, the All-Father's air, scintillant circulum ambience where. Breathe it deep into thee. By heaven, Theodore Purefoy, thou hast done a doughty deed in no bot. Thou art, I vow, the remarkablest progenitor barring none in this chafering including most ferruginous chronicle. Interlay a God from it given preformed possibility which thou hast fructified with thy modicum of man's work. Cleave to her. Serve. Toil on, labor like a very bandrug and let Shalarmant and all Malthusiasts go hang. Thou art all their daddies, Theodore. Art drooping under thy load, bemoiled with butcher's bills at home and ingots not thine. In the counting house. Head up. For every new begotten thou shalt gather thy homer of ripe wheat. See, thy fleece is drenched. Dost envy Darby Dolman there with his Joan? A canting jay and a broom-eyed cur-dog is all the progeny. Pshaw, I tell thee. He is a mule, a dead gasteropod, without vim or stamina, not worth a crack kreutzer. Copulation without population. No, say I. Herod slaughter of the innocents were the truer name. Vegetables, forsooth, and staring cohabitation. Give her beefsteaks, red, raw, bleeding. She is a horrid pandemonium of ills, enlarged glands, mumps, quinsy, bunions, hay fever, bed sores, ringworm, floating kidney, Derbyshire neck, warts, bilious attacks, gallstones, cold feet, varicose veins. The truce to Therians and Trentals and Yeremies and all such congenital defunctive music. 20 years of it, regret them not. But thee it was not as with many that will and wait to never do. Thou so wearest thy America, thou life task, indeed charged to cover like the transpontine bison. How saith Zarathustra? Dean Kutrupsil Malchus do. None trinks de disos milch deuters. See. It explodes for thee in abundance. Drink, man, and utterful. Mother's milk, Purefoy, the milk of human kin, milk too of those burgeoning stars overhead, rudiments and thin rain vapor, punch milk, such as those riders will quaff in their guzzling den, milk of madness, the honey milk of Canaan's land. Thy cow's dug was tough, what? Ah, but her milk is hot and sweet and fattening. No dollop this but thick rich bionic labor. To her, old patriarch. Pap. Verdine parchulam impertum dam nunc est bending.